So we use the preterite and imperfect pretty much. There's other tenses. We'll learn those next spring. But when we tell a story in the past, which from a communicative perspective, we're always telling stories. We're always telling our friends or family or whoever what happened last weekend. Or like how'd that test go. We're always narrating in the past. When we come back on Wednesday, what'd you do for fall break? We're always talking about the past. So this is a really, really, really important skill to learn and hopefully polish someday. To be able to speak Spanish, to be able to understand what people are talking about, and also be able to articulate. Narrating in the past, using the preterite and the imperfect. So we're not going to take time to do this just because, but ¿qué hiciste ayer is asking what? Just to reiterate, going back to basics, chapter 9, August. ¿Qué hiciste ayer? I'm asking you what? What did you do yesterday? And if you were to respond to this, you would tell me 3 specific activities that you did yesterday. Ayer por la mañana trabajé, por la tarde fui a mi casa, por la noche tuve que corregir unos exámenes. Trabajé, fui, tuve. Pretérito, pretérito, pretérito. Okay? Specific because why? Why are these actions specific? Because I'm referring to when? Yesterday. So distinct, so specific. I even state what time of day. Okay? Versus what we learned in chapter 10. ¿Qué hacías de niño? I'm not talking about yesterday. What am I talking about? As a child. Like your entire childhood? That is not a very specific, it's a specific time in your life, but that's a big, 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 big span of life. Okay? And when we talked about this, we didn't talk about one-time activities completed in the past. When I say iba a la casa de mis abuelos versus fui a la casa de mis abuelos, when you hear iba, you know that I went one time or repeated times? Repeated times. Yes, many times. This action, iba, is indicating more than once. Fui is just once. Fui a la playa. Fui a la casa de mis abuelos. Okay? But iba a la casa indicates habitual, repeated. That's really the fundamental difference. Preterite's one time. Imperfect is repeated, habitual time. So comía muchos dulces isn't just one time, generally speaking. Jugaba al fútbol, generally speaking. So sometimes people say, I used to ia. Just that little rhyme. I used to ia. Because imperfect is used to. Aba, AR verbs, ia. ER, IR verbs. Imperfect. Okay? So preterite, just to clarify, it's so important that you comprehend these things separately right now, how they're used, before we put them together. So is everybody clear on the preterite? Specific actions completed one time in the past. Okay? And you can put this on your chart on the back side of this paper. Some of you already are. Muy bien. Acciones específicas, or in English, specific actions. One time. Okay? Completed one time in the past. They have a clear beginning and end. We know when that action started. We know when that action ended. Either because there's a reference of time, like 20 minutes. The test was 20 minutes long. Fue 20 minutos. El examen fue 20 minutos. Or, like, recibí mi licencia de conducir, even though we don't have, like, a specific time, like, on a timeline, we know just because verbs like empezar, terminar, recibir, some verbs are just so logical, like, I got my driver's license. We know that that's, like, typically a one-time action. It's understood. Imperfect, repeated, habitual, some sort of description, like it was a dark and stormy night. That would be imperfect. Okay? See.
So why in...
I'll get to that.
Okay.
Hold up. It's the same question, right? As before with Tania. I'll get to it. I know. And I'm glad you're thinking about that. And I will help you figure that out. So, today we had licencia de conducir. And I'm going to give you an example. Lots of examples today. Using the preterite and imperfect. However, unlike the book, okay? This is why I don't ever use a book. The book's like roll, grammar, which is great, but it's not meaningful. We're talking about something that you did in your life, and we can apply the grammar to prior knowledge that you already have, and it'll make more sense. Plus, the more examples you have, the more, this is why I speak Spanish in class. The more Spanish I speak, the more you hear it, the more you're going to absorb it and ultimately be able to produce it. That's how language learning works. That's why kids don't start, you don't have a baby and they're like, hey mom, how's it going? That was crazy. They hear language for 3 years almost before they can start saying anything. Think about it. Think about your minds. You're just 2 years in, not even. So you need all these examples first. That's why the story is so long. And then you can reference these examples when you're doing your supersite homework. And then you can reflect on this when you're applying new concepts, new storytelling in the past, on the test, and the final exam. So we're going to focus on the meaning. All right, so we already talked about this, and I just rewrote it a little bit differently. Cuando tenía 16 años, recibí mi licencia de conducir. Durante toda mi adolescencia, quería conducir. So first, let's focus on the meaning, then we'll identify the grammar. What is it saying? And you can apply this probably to your life. This is kind of universal among adolescents. What's this saying? Quería conducir. Wanted to drive. Okay, so throughout my entire adolescence, which was probably the same for y'all, was everybody kind of eager to get their driver's license? Most of us are. That's pretty unanimous in our culture. Quería. So now let's talk about the grammar. We're going to identify preterite or imperfect. Quería, preterite or imperfect? Imperfect. First of all, how do you know? What can you tell about the conjugation? Ia, right? Ia is imperfect. So you might want to label these in the story. You can do IRP. You don't have to do IMP. You just do the letter I or the letter P. Or if you have more than one highlighter, consider color coding. What? Do you have that example? It should be. Toda. Yeah, sorry. There might be a couple variations. So why do you think this is imperfect? I wanted to drive.
Because we're talking about like an extended period of time that wasn't a defined moment.
Yes, exactly. So remember, imperfect is repeated, habitual, ongoing. Preterite's like one time, okay? Also, wanting, like wanting something, whenever we want to express wanting, we're going to use quería. Like, ugh, no quería estudiar. In general, because wants, it's hard to tell the beginning and end of that action. So we usually express wanting in Spanish with quería. Just note that. Also, querer is a verb that changes meaning in the preterite. It has nothing to do with want in the preterite, remember? Quiso, for example, or like no quise. No quise means refuse, and quise means to try, or tried. So it has a totally different meaning in the preterite anyway. So most of the time we're expressing wanting, like tried or refused is so specific anyway. I very rarely use that in speaking Spanish. Usually we express wants in the past. So like, when in doubt, probably go with quería over quiso or quise. Most likely, because that's so specific to the context versus quería is more general. Pregunta?
See, so this is, if you're, because the way you said no quería estudiar, that sounded like
it could refer to last night, right?
Yeah, like or
if
even,
that, yes. And so that's I know when I said that I was like, this might throw them off a little bit. It does. Imperfect can be yesterday.
Okay.
The ongoing action, it doesn't have to only be restricted to childhood or like las etapas de vida, like adolescencia, because you're going to see a lot today and examples on the super site that the imperfect can be used to refer to yesterday as well. If I said ayer anoche no quería estudiar, that is grammatically correct because I'm emphasizing the ongoing lack of interest in studying, lack of motivation to study.
But you still use like if you say,
I'll still use imperfect even if I used ayer.
But no, like if you're saying like today I don't want to study, you would use the present.
Yeah,
tense.
quiero. No quiero estudiar.
Okay.
Sí, sí, sí. Ok. Yo practicaba manejar todos los días. What's this idea expressing? What did I do?
You practice
Practice driving
every day.
every day. That's a context clue. And you might want to put that on your imperfect chart. Or you could just put on your imperfect chart, I think it's page 266, todos los días. A menudo. Those context clues, let me just confirm that. What page that is? I think it's 266. Yeah, 266. Muchas veces, pocas veces, con frecuencia, de vez en cuando. Page 66, you could put on your chart under imperfect, because all of those adverbs or expressions indicate repeated habitual actions, okay? When you hear practicaba, you know I went into that driver's test with lots of time practicing driving, right? Versus like practiqué, you'd be like, whoa, you really didn't prepare, you know? Okay, so todos los días, todos los veranos, a menudo, de vez en cuando. Okay? So, aber imperfect. Antes de tomar el examen, yo estaba lista y un poco nerviosa. So, antes de tomar el examen es muy importante. What's that saying? Before. Prior to taking the test, right? Prior to taking the test, I what?
Was ready.
I was ready, but nervous. So why would this be in the imperfect? Does anybody know why? Sorry, I didn't even ask you imperfect or preterite. Estaba's imperfect, so you want to label that. I need to make sure I have you identify the conjugation, because some people can't even recognize the difference between a verb conjugated and the preterite and the imperfect, which is fundamental. So why would this be imperfect? Pregunta?
No.
Okay, answer. Perfecto. Uh-huh.
Because it has aba, so that
Aba's
indicates
imperfect.
that it's imperfect, but it also could apply to every exam.
Yeah, or even though it's this particular exam, you're on the right track. Anna?
Because you're not just nervous for like a second.
Right. This is ongoing. This is leading up. This is how I was feeling leading up to that particular test. So feelings, not always, nothing's really 100% of the time besides age, but feelings are typically imperfect, leading up to something, how you feel. So, estaba. Okay, otro ejemplo. I'm trying to make this as black and white and concrete as possible. If you major in Spanish or if you go on to speak Spanish, you'll learn more about this. But these are the general rules. Hacía sol, no llovía, era un día bonito, tiempo perfecto para conducir. So what am I describing here?
The weather, like
The weather, right? Llovía, hacía, era. So what tense am I using to describe the weather? Preterite or imperfect? All these verbs are in the imperfect, okay? Weather. Unless it's a tornado or a hurricane or an earthquake or something, when you see hacía plus a weather description, anything that has to do with the weather, you're going to use the imperfect on the supersite, unless it's like a natural disaster. Okay, or a sudden like bolt of lightning or a crash of thunder. You would use a preterite for those because why? Why would you use the preterite for an earthquake? Why would you use the preterite for when Dorian hit?
because that is a specific.
Because it's so specific. It's one time. It's completed. You're not just saying like, even if you're describing the weather yesterday, you're going to use the imperfect because weather is ongoing. Okay? Descriptions are typically imperfect. Okay. This is another tricky one, Marina. I know you're going to be like, what? Because you already know this, the age thing. Eran las 4 de la tarde cuando el examen empezó. I've got two verbs here. What tense are they in? What's eran? Preterite or imperfect? Imperfect. But empezó is what? Preterite. Okay, so Marina was noticing this earlier, and here's another example where we have both tenses in one sentence. Is there anything about this sentence, word order, hint, tense, and tenses versus our original response? Yo tenía 16 años cuando recibí mi licencia de conducir.
It's the same order.
It's the same order. Exactly, Anna. It's the same order. What do we have? What does she mean, same order? What do we have first? What tense? Imperfect, and then we have preterite. What else is similar in this sentence versus that first one?
Well, like age and time are kind of like similar because they're both like
Talking about specific.
Yeah, I know.
time is like a unit. Sorry, but
Yeah.
weird. But and then impeso is like because it's talking about the exam. That's specific.
Started. Right. So started and received are definitely preterite one-time actions.
That means starting.
Empezó means started. Yeah. Okay. Is there any word in the sentence, possibly between the imperfect tense and the preterite tense, that you see in this sentence that you saw in the other sentence? Cuando. Okay, this is not linguistic classification that's accepted professionally among Spanish-speaking or Spanish teachers. But this is what I call a cuando sandwich, basically. Imperfect, cuando, preterite. Okay? Why? Because cuando means what? When. Okay? Listen carefully. And you can note this on your papers, and that's why I have this set up like this. When we have the imperfect is kind of like, if I had to illustrate the imperfect with like a symbol, I would do like a squiggly line with arrows like that. Because it's kind of like used to say it's an ongoing action, no clear beginning and end. The preterite, though, I would use like an X on a timeline to be like, boom, that happened, okay? Cuando means when, so a lot of times the cuando sandwich, whatever classification applies to your answers on the supersite and on the test, because this states what was going on when something happened. Cuando interrupts. And when there's an action in progress, that squiggly line, that's the imperfect. Like, I was sleeping, or she was studying. This is the ongoing action, the imperfect, what was going on. When the fire alarm went off, when my roommate came home, when class ended, okay? So cuando interrupts the action, and usually the action after that's a preterite. Whatever, like I was walking down the street when I tripped and fell. See?
So numero uno on the front page.
Yeah, they.
It's the same sentence, but like a different structure.
Okay, yeah.
Cuando in the
Yes.
beginning.
Okay, let me just add one quick thing, and then I'm going to talk about that. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because we can vary our word order in English and Spanish. So the imperfect, like this, when the action's in progress, is kind of expressing the idea of ing in English. Was sleeping, was walking, were listening. Whenever we want to express that idea, even if it was yesterday or like 5 minutes ago, we use the imperfect. What were you going to say? Iba. Okay? Ibas a decir. Actions in progress, imperfect. And preterite's like simple past tense, usually ed, but it doesn't always translate that way. Okay, so this is a cuando sandwich, my fancy term. But Margarita pointed out, wait a second, on the paper, in our handout, it says, Cuando tenía 16 años, yo recibí mi licencia de conducir. So sometimes you don't feel like a sandwich, you want to go with a low carb option and you get a wrap. So this is like the cuando wrap. We can rearrange the order of our ideas, but it's still following the same principles. It's still following cuando, interrupting the action. Like, yo recibí mi licencia de, or cuando tenía 16 años, Yo recibí mi licencia de conducir. If you're like, wait, I see cuando, and there's two blanks. This is like the superset or something. Then you really got to think about what's being said. Could I say it like this in English? Because this translates very nicely into English. Okay? So you really have to identify the vocabulary. And usually students who are really good at vocab, they're like walking diccionarios. Like some people are really good at vocab, some people are really good at grammar. My students that have a really good grasp of vocab don't struggle too much with the preterite and imperfect because they're able to decode what the sentence is saying and think about it. So what you want to do is think about, even if you're not good at vocab, you can still identify what's this saying. Can I rearrange the word order? If I could, then it's a cuando wrap and not a cuando sandwich. Okay? There's a supersite activity where it's like all cuando sandwiches. And if you see, blank, cuando, blank, it's imperfect cuando preterite, imperfect cuando preterite. Okay? Another supersite activity, it's not on the test. I'm going to just put it further down. Is you've got a cuando sandwich, which is imperfect cuando preterite. But if you see the word mientras on the supersite, again, this isn't on the test or the final exam, but I'm pretty sure it's on the supersite. If you have a blank before mientras and after mientras, both of those verbs are going to be in the imperfect because mientras means while. Like, I was taking notes while she was talking. Anytime you interpret something as ing in the past tense, it's imperfect. That's what you're conveying. So mientras is another one. Okay. So that's why, Marina, to go back what you've been noticing, age is pretty specific. Time. This is telling what time it is. That's like to the minute. Couldn't be any more specific, but yet we're using imperfect. That's because of the word order with cuando. But also, it doesn't have to be limited to cuando. These are exceptions to the whole specific thing with preterite. Age is always imperfect. Age is always tenía, and clock on the wall time. Eran las 4. If you see the verb ser in parentheses and you have a number, just like if you see the verb tener in parentheses and you have an age, you know it's going to be eran. So I'm going to say clock time because time could be interpreted different ways, but I'm talking about like clock on the wall. Margarita?
Can you generalize and say that every time cuando is used, it's always going to be in the order of imperfect and then preterite?
If cuando's in the middle, yeah, you could say definitely for a 201 and through 202. You can say it's pretty much always imperfect cuando preterite.
Okay, will imperfect always be before the preterite?
With cuando, when cuando separates the actions, yeah.
Okay.
It is. So that's something you can rely on. Okay. Y por ejemplo aquí tengo primero me subí al carro. So what's the saying here? ¿Cómo se dice primero? First, okay? So remember I'm talking about when I got my driver's license. And first I did this, then I did that, then I did this. Take note of those words because those are called sequencing words. First, luego, después, entonces, por último. When we list off a sequence of events, we use the preterite. Because remember we use the preterite for acciones específicas, specific events. And we also, when we sequence events, a sequencing of events. When we list off, first I did this, then I did that. Later we did this, and then finally we did that. Boom, 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 boom. When we list off the activities, like, I drove with my friends on a road trip for fall break. We stopped overnight here. We got some food, blah, blah, blah. Then we got back in the car the next day, kept driving. And finally arrived, the next day in the afternoon. All of those events in Spanish would be in the preterite. When we list off first, later, then, finally, boom, boom, boom. Okay? ¿Entienden? So look for those context clues. Por ejemplo, después prendí el carro Or otra palabra de vocabulario es arrancar, ¿no? Arranqué el carro. Those are sinónimos. El carro con la llave, ¿no? En el carro, el examinador me preguntó, ¿está lista? ¿No? Pretérito, otra vez, ¿no? So what's going on here? Just to clarify the vocabulario. El examinador me preguntó, what's it saying? Yeah. What is that really saying? We know it has to do with a pregunta. He what? He asked me, right? Me preguntó. Just concentrating on those direct objects. Me preguntó el examinador. ¿Está lista? Pretérito. Específico. Anything in parentheses, unless we're saying like used to always say, is going to be preterite. Yo le dije sí y empecé a manejar el carro. So when I say le dije, what is that idea expressing? Le dije. Yo le dije. I what? I told him. Yeah, le is referring to him. Le dije sí y empecé a manejar el carro. Okay? Pretérito. Dije irregular de decir. So normally she said what? Or I told you, or, I remember her saying in class, blah, blah, blah. All of those examples, past tense is usually dijo, dije, me dije, or me dijo, or, nos dijo, por ejemplo. We usually use decir in the preterite when we're talking about past tense, what people said. Or she totally told you to do that. Or my parents told me, blah, blah, blah. It's usually a form of decir, dije in the preterite. The only time we'd use decir in the imperfect, decir, is if like Marina was going to ask a question, but Anastasia already started talking. And then I go back to her and I want to say, what were you going to say? Then I would use decir, because the action in progress, decir, ing, anytime we express ing in the past tense, we use imperfect. Okay, decir, what were you saying? Another exception with decir in the imperfect is like my grandmother used to always say. That's a repeated habitual thing. So we'd say, mi abuela siempre decía, come tus verduras or something like that, or sea cortes or something like that, okay? Normalmente we use a form of dije. All right. Conduje por el centro de la ciudad observando los semáforos y la velocidad. Conduje. ¿Cómo se dice conduje? I what? Drove. Irregular. ¿Cuál es el infinitivo de conduje? Conducir. No? So just like decir, dije, we use the JE for conducir. Any verb in the preterite tense ending in CIRs typically follows that rule. Why is this in the preterite? Conduje por el centro de la ciudad. I drove. So why is this in the preterite? Because what am I talking about here? Why did I drive through the city?
You're talking about the specific
Yeah, and I'm driving on what day? What day is this? The driver's test, right, that monumental day where you get your license. Very specific, okay? It's not I used to always drive with my parents to my grandparents' house or something like that. Semáforos, ¿cómo se dice semáforos? Traffic lights. And ¿qué es velocidad? Probably the speed limit, right? Because why? Even though it doesn't look like the word speed limit, it looks like what word? Velocity, which has to do with motion. In Espanol, speed limit is velocidad. That's important to note if you rent a car in a Spanish-speaking country. Okay. Yo manejaba muy bien cuando otro carro me pasó rápidamente. Inmediatamente yo puse los frenos. Okay. Tenemos el pretérito e imperfecto con estos ejemplos. So, ¿cuál de estos verbos es el imperfecto? El imperfecto es
Oh, manejaba.
Manejaba, ¿no? Este verbo es imperfecto. ¿Y pasó es imperfecto o pretérito?
Pretérito.
Pretérito. Puse es imperfecto o pretérito? Pretérito. Ok, hablemos de la gramática. Pero primero, ¿qué está pasando? ¿No? What's it saying? Yo manejaba muy bien cuando otro carro me pasó rápidamente. What idea am I trying to convey here? What was going on when something happens? What was I doing? I was what? Driving. Manejar and conducir. You can use either one you like. Conducir is easier to understand because it looks like, the word conduct. You associate that with driving. But conducir is irregular in the preterite, so you can use manejar in the preterite, which is regular. So it's easier to conjugate, less easy to recognize. I was driving. What's it saying? I was driving really well. Cuando? When? What happened? Another car passed me. Yes, sped past me quickly. Exactly. So even though I'm describing a specific event, why am I using imperfect here? What do we learn on Friday? Muy importante. On Friday about this action using the imperfect when something else happens. What's that called again? A cuando sandwich, right? The term I coined unofficially, grammatically. Why is this a cuando sandwich?
Because you were doing something and then something stopped that.
Yes, exactly. So we use the imperfect to express any idea that we would express in English, ing. Was talking, was sleeping, what were you going to say, okay? That's the imperfect, action in progress, right? But then what does cuando mean? Cuando means when, and that is an interrupting action. Therefore, the subsequent action is specific. It interrupted, and we use the preterite, okay? Does that make sense? The cuando sandwich, imperfect cuando preterite. I had a SNAP student on the final exam I'll never forget. This was like in 2011. I just remember so many things that students share before a test or something, little things that they use to remember, and I'm like, that's so helpful. So she was like, to remember the word order, imperfect cuando preterite, she's like telling her classmates, she was like, I just remember that like playground joke when you're kids, you're like, spell I cup. Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard it? Mm-hmm. So when you say spell I cup, you spell I-C-U-P. And she's like, that's how I remember imperfect cuando preterite. Which I was like, that's super helpful because that's the word order. Imperfect, then cuando, then preterite. Why is this other verb in the preterite? Puse los frenos.
Because you're still doing the action, or you're reacting to that.
I'm reacting to it, exactly. How do we know I'm reacting? What adverb do we see? We talked about adverbs in chapter 10. We have rápidamente describing this action, but inmediatamente. This means what? Immediately. A verb after immediately in the past tense is definitely going to be in the preterite because, like Anastasia said, it's a reaction. I immediately did this. De repente. And we talked about words, some adverbs, but we also talked about other adverbs that we learned long ago with the preterite that we would use with the preterite de repente. Because I could replace inmediatamente with de repente. Suddenly. So these little context clues, anoche, anteayer, all of these on page 153 are really helpful context clues with the preterite. So that might be something I'd revisit before the test or maybe in the super site. I bookmarked it in my book to use as a reference. Okay, el examinador no estaba contento. So what's this saying? Not happy, right? So we have estaba, pretérito or imperfecto? Imperfecto. Aba is imperfecto. Why? What's contento? A feeling, exactly. And remember, we use el imperfecto with emotions, feelings, because they're descriptions. Once again, adjetivos. Pretty much for Spanish 201, if you see an adjective, your verb's going to mean imperfect. Can you use it with a preterite? Yes, you definitely can. But for the most part, when we're describing feelings, we use the imperfect. Okay, después tuve que hacer la parte más difícil, estacionar el carro en paralelo. ¿Tuvieron que estacionar el carro en paralelo? Porque para mí en Kentucky es necesario. Parte del examen es estacionar el carro en paralelo, pero tengo otros estudiantes que no tuvieron que estacionar el carro en paralelo. Y Charleston es una ciudad de estacionar el carro en paralelo. ¿Tuvieron que estacionar el carro en paralelo? ¿Sí? Y es la parte más difícil, ¿no? Bueno, hablemos de la gramática. Tuve, pretérito o imperfecto. Tuve? Pretérito, irregular, ¿no? Pretérito, ¿por qué? En inglés está bien. First of all, después. What's después? How would we classify después? Sequencing of events. Primero, luego, después, entonces, por último. Those are sequencing events words, so we're definitely using the preterite. What does tuve que hacer mean? I what? I had to do the most difficult part, right? So I had to. This is very specific to this action listed off in the events that took place on that very day, okay? All of those reasons are why we use the irregular form of tener in the preterite. What's the imperfect of tener? Not tuve. Tuve is the irregular preterite, but imperfect is regular. Tener is what? Tenía, right? And if I said tenía que hacer la parte más difícil, that would indicate lots of practice and doing it over and over again. I had to do it a lot. So it's a totally different. Yeah. Okay, y miren, ejemplos de los dos, imperfecto y pretérito. So what verb is in the imperfect here? Which one? Tenía or tuve? Tenía is in the imperfect. Tuve is the preterite. We just went over that. So how is it possible that I'm using the same verb in two different tenses in the same sentence? Why is that? How is that possible?
Is you're talking, the first part of the sentence is talking about like before the driver's test, and
Sí.
then you're talking about during that day.
Exactly. So those two context clues completely dictate the tense of my verb, tener. Antes, like Anastasia said, is referring to prior. Remember, antes means before. Después is after. Antes is before. So this is leading up to this. I had problems parallel parking. I did it over and over again and wasn't so good at it. That's indicated, or sorry, I didn't. I was good at it. Leading up to that day, I didn't have any problems. That's a repeated action. Okay, I did it more than once, it was all good. But then we have aquel día, that day, which is muy específico. El martes pasado, muy específico. Por ejemplo, boom, instantly I must use the preterite because now I'm talking specific versus general. See?
So, aunties, we should not put on the list of,
You could throw it on the list. Antes isn't, it's confusing because
it's not an event, sequence of event.
no, it's not as, it's confusing because después is. But después is used in sequencing of events, but antes would be, you might want to put it under the imperfect. Because antes is referring to in the past. You know, like antes, like, you know, when you hear the word antes, we could be referring how things used to be, like back in the day. Antes can be used to express like back in the day. Antes no había computadoras, no había tanta tecnología como ahora. So antes versus ahora, imperfect versus present. That's gracias por clarificar. I would throw antes on to the imperfect side. Okay. Otra vez, chicos, miren, yo estacionaba en paralelo cuando choqué con un carro estacionado. So what happens? This is slightly embellished. This did not actually happen in my driver's test. It would be terrible if it did. What am I making up? This is kind of fictional. What allegedly happened in my driver's test?
Parallel parking.
I was parallel parking when I crashed or hit a parked car. Okay? That did not happen. Thank goodness. I usually have like codes set up anyway. And what do we see going on here in terms of grammar? Now that we've identified the meaning, estacionaba, imperfecto or pretérito? Imperfecto. And then choque is pretérito, because what's going on here, chicos? Cuando sandwich, imperfect cuando preterite. Action in progress. I was doing this when this happened. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Inmediatamente, I think on your paper I changed it to de repente. No, I used it again. Okay. Inmediatamente el examinador se bajó del carro y examinó el otro carro. Se bajó, examinó, imperfecto or pretérito? Pretérito, no? Because why? What happened? Immediately what?
Immediately.
Yeah, he what? What should you do if you hit a parked car?
Get out of the car and look at
Get out of the car and check, right? Examine it, check it, whatever. So why are these verbs in the preterite? There's a couple of reasons. What's a context clue that's like non-debatable? Immediatamente. Immediately. Boom. This happened and this happened. Okay, so that's why both of those verbs in the preterite. But also, getting out of a car is a one-time completed action typically. It's not usually repeated or general. Or examino, also specific event that took place that day. De repente me puse muy nerviosa. ¿Cómo se dice de repente? So I hit this car, allegedly. This is made up. I'm just trying to use vocab and use more preterite and perfect examples. So I hit this parked car. The driver's test person gets out. And how do I react? I'm like, uh-oh, joder. De repente means what? Suddenly. Okay, so me puse is what? Pretérito or imperfecto? Suddenly I what? What does me puse? Muy nerviosa. What does this probably mean? Suddenly I got nervous. Okay? So even though nerviosa, this would be the exception I was talking about. Notice we're not using ser or a star with an adjective to describe how I was feeling. This is a reaction. This is a reaction to the event. Okay? So that's why nothing besides really tener, tenía with H is always. Nothing's always. It's always in the preterite or it's always in the imperfect. Because it really depends on the idea you're trying to convey. Even though nervioso is an adjective, I'm not using ser or a star to describe. Ponerse, we use it with clothes. When we get dressed, we can say like, hoy me puse un vestido. I put on a dress today. Por ejemplo. But ponerse can also be used with emotions to express I got. Me puse muy nerviosa cuando el examen empezó. And in that particular example, I have cuando and two verbs in the preterite. That's why even the cuando sandwich thing isn't always. It will be always for the test, and that's what you care about the most, okay? So careful with some of these. Okay, pero él me dijo, está bien. Era la cuneta. So dijo and era, dos verbos. ¿Cuál verbo es el pretérito? ¿Dijo or era? Dijo pretérito y era imperfecto. ¿Por qué? What's pero él me dijo? Está bien. Me dijo. What does me dijo mean? This is what I was talking about earlier with the verb decir. What does dijo mean? He said to me, right? Él me dijo. So he said to whom? Me. Me. Está bien. What did he tell me? It's okay. What? What's era la cuneta? curb. Right, exactly, Cluny. That's the word for curb. And I'm using era imperfect because why? Era la cunita. Was that curb there just for a moment and then disappeared when the action was over? No. It's ongoing. Era. So we use the imperfect to state that it was there the whole time, and I wouldn't use a preterite. Entonces, él se subió al carro. En el carro escribió algo. So, se subió al carro, escribió algo. So it's like, it's all good, it was just the curb. Entonces means what? Then, what did he do? After he checked things out, what did he do? Walk away? He got back in the car. Se subió al carro. En el carro escribió algo. So he got back in the car and then what did he do? Wrote something. Boom, boom. Sequence of events. Pretérito, pretérito. ¿Comprenden? Okay. Me dio el examen, saqué, that's actually true, 70% en el examen y recibí mi licencia. Okay? All of these verbs, dio, saqué, recibí, pretérito or imperfecto? Pretérito, because what's happening now in the story? Where am I in my story? Looking at the paper, where are we? Top, middle, or bottom? Bottom, because why? Where am I in the story? Intro, body, or conclusion? Conclusion. I'm summarizing the events. I'm wrapping up the story. Okay? It's still very specific what occurred. I'm coming to my conclusion. So he what? Me dio el examen. He what? What's it saying? Me dio el examen. He gave me the test. Saqué 70% en el examen. What's that saying? I got a 70. I really did. But it wasn't because I hit a curb or a parked car. It's really because, it's so funny, like, this is why this is such a monumental moment. How do I still remember this? Because I didn't put my hand on the back of the passenger side seat, and I just used my mirrors to parallel park, and I didn't put my hand back, and I didn't turn around. And I got a 70. I was like, whatever, I got my keys. I don't care, adios. I was like 70's passing. D's get degrees. Okay, recibí mi licencia, saying what? I received my license. So recibí, we use a lot. Recibir means to receive. It also is used a lot in Spanish to convey the idea I got. Recibí 70%. You can use anything you got. Usually past tense preterite, because the act of getting something, receiving, is usually very specific, beginning and end completed. Okay, muy importante, chicos. Fue una experiencia de suspensa pero buena. This is the last sentence of the story, okay? And what is this saying? This is like muy importante. This is definitely on your test. You actually wrote this on your last ampliación. I deliberately made you write it. Actually, on both ampliaciones, I had you include this. What am I saying here?
It was a scary experience.
Yeah, exactly. It was a suspenseful experience, but good overall. So what am I doing here? First of all, fue. Is that pretérito or imperfecto? Pretérito. This is important to note because I'm telling you, you've already used it a couple times this semester on purpose. I slipped it in there. Secondly, it's going to be on the test and probably the final exam because you're going to have to do this on the final as well. Preterite versus imperfect. Fue, or it can also be plural, fueron, plus an adjective is used to summarize an event in the preterite. So when we summarize an event in the preterite, we usually use fue, like mis vacaciones de fall break is plural, so I'd have to use fueron. That's why mis vacaciones fueron maravillosas, no? Or fueron tranquilas, or, you know, mi examen fue terrible, por ejemplo. Fue or fueron, this is the verb ser, not ir, not like, you know, Catalina fue a Philadelphia? Pennsylvania?
Yeah, that's
Okay, fue, that's ir, But fue and fueron here is ser plus an adjective to summarize an event, always in the preterite. Like, ¿cómo fue la fiesta? Or ¿cómo fue el examen? Or ¿cómo fue tu nota de midterm? Por ejemplo. Whenever we summarize something, we use the preterite. Fue plus adjective. You're going to do it on your ampliación. You're going to see it on the test. It's the last answer on this section of the test. It's definitely on the final exam. Es muy, muy importante. Okay, chicos?